I'm back, and welcome to another Friday Fun Friday edition of Second City Sports. We're live in living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago, along with Miss Lakeem McGee, which is she. I am Cindy Brown. Hey, that's me. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter and the IG at CK80. Once again, at CK80, that's SIDKID80, SIDKID80.
You can follow me at Keita McGee on the Twitter and at Keita McGee on the IG.
Make sure you follow Sports Zone Chicago on all social media platforms: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Make sure you download that Sports Zone Chicago app wherever you get your apps. You want to know why? Because we said so, that's why. And also, so you can catch up on other live shows we have airing throughout the week. So if you happen to miss them, you can catch them and watch them and listen to them at your own leisure. Make sure you download that Sports Zone Chicago app today. Speaking of our podcast, Second City Sports, you must subscribe to it. We are available on all podcast platforms, including that iHeartRadio app. Make sure you type this in your search engine boxes on those podcast platforms. You ready? WARR Media Podcast. Once again, at WARR Media Podcast, that's PODCASTS. That's we're at War Media Podcast now on all podcast platforms. And speaking of War Media, please go ahead and give us a follow at WARR Media on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Once again, at War Media, WARR Media on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And thank you very much in advance for your support.
Like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends.
We are unapologetically fun, and we have very definite opinions. If you have any definite opinions during our 2-hour extravaganza we call a Sports Talk Radio Show, you can always hit us up in the comment section at Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or at Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in your questions and comments in the comment section. Lakina will get them up on the screen for you. But if you decide to troll and or do something silly or stupid, I've given Lakina full power to give you fools to be a boot.
Bye-bye.
I love when she says that. But before we get started, we must remind you that you can catch Sports Zone Chicago now available on Roku TV. That's right, so celebrate the squad and get with the program. Sports Zone Chicago is now available on Roku TV. If you already have a Roku television, just tap on the sports folder and download Sports Zone Chicago through that avenue. If you don't have a Roku TV, but you have some handheld devices laying around, your iPad, iPhone, iTouch, your personal PC like Lakina's using right now, or your Chromebook like I'm using right now, just jet on over to the Google Play Store, download the Roku TV app, and access Sports Zone Chicago through that avenue. So no more excuses. Celebrate the squad and get with the program. Sports Zone Chicago is now available on Roku TV. We are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and 365 days a year.
Anywhere, anytime you want.
And you know we can provide. I know you missed that on Monday, did you?
Brother.
Come on, you know you did.
Okay, anyway, we got a busy show lineup for you all today. We're gonna recap the men's national championship game. Where UConn has now won 5. We have Christine on, our girl Christine Manika from KXRB, talk about all the latest sports topics and such, and maybe even an appearance by our fiance Chris, so we could talk a little Masters. We got Masters going on this weekend, but we are gonna start off by talking some Bulls and NBA. This is the last week of the regular season. The last couple of games left. Unfortunately, that's how you look at it, I guess. Unfortunately, the Bulls, lose some opportunities. They lose to Atlanta, who were without Trae Young and a couple of other guys. Then, unfortunately, they lose to the Bucks as well. So they've clinched the 10th spot. Yeah, I know that. A lot of folks want to groan at that, but it is what it is there. So they can still kind of like improve their record a little bit, but. Look, I don't want to. I'm hearing people like rant and rave about the Bulls. There really is no point in doing that, especially this late in the season. It is what it is with them, and what can you do? But I feel like this Bulls team, could they perhaps maybe sneak in there and get to the main draw, maybe? But I'm not like counting on that. So what do you think, Sid?
I think that this Bulls team on the court is satisfied where their position is. Like you said, given the fact that they underperformed the last 2 games. Shout out to them beating Memphis the way they did last Sunday afternoon, coming back from 20 points down and beating the playoff team by 20-plus points. But I don't know if you heard Zach LaVine following Tuesday night's loss to Atlanta. He said that the Atlanta won anymore. And at this time of year, that's a problem, Lakina. It's been a problem with this Bulls team all year. But if you saying this with 3 or 4 games to go left in the regular season that another team wanted it more than you did, and you had the home crown behind you, I have a problem with that. Kobe Bryant said this. The late Kobe Bryant said this. Michael Jordan said this a lot, especially during the championship years. You want to play your best basketball going into the playoffs. And the Bulls for the last few weeks have been on their best stretch of the season. And then by virtue of an Orlando Magic loss the other night, that's what made the Bulls clinch the 10th spot, even though they lost to Atlanta. This team, they are who we thought they were. They're just a below to an average team at best. And the way they played against Atlanta, I'll be honest, Ken, I did watch the majority of that game. And unfortunately, that's 2.5 hours that I cannot get back. Let's be honest here. They took for granted that Trae Young was not there. He didn't even make the trip to Chicago. They thought they can just waltz in and walk their way into a victory. And they got caught with their pants down. The pressure was on them, not Atlanta. Atlanta's in a better position, even though it's about a game and a half separated now. But Atlanta is in a better position for the playoffs than the Bulls are. And the Bulls just waltzed in, thought, okay, they don't have Trae Young, so we can just go in there and get a victory. It just didn't happen that way. It's not supposed to happen that way. You're supposed to come out and play a full 48-minute game, and they did not do that. Now, the Milwaukee game, I'm not going to get into too much. They did lead the Bucks early in the third quarter, but the Bucks sat Giannis, they sat Grayson Allen. Chris Middleton went out early in the game dealing with the knee issues that he's been dealing with since last season in the playoffs when he injured it originally against the Bulls. But I'm more upset at that Atlanta game than the Milwaukee game, to be honest with you, Lakina. Remember the problem last year? The Bulls could beat the lesser opponents, but not the playoff caliber teams. We flipped and reversed it this year, and they proved that against sub-500 teams, they just a lack of preparation is mostly a lack of focus. And you can get mad at head coach Billy Donovan all you want to, but this ultimately comes down to the players.
Yeah, the whole thing with that is that, you can kind of tell, especially when that quiz started talking about Atlanta early on, you thought, okay, yeah, it's gonna be one of those games, huh? So, that's not a good look if you're saying that, well, they wanted more. I mean, that's if you try to, improve your seeding, this is sort of not the thing you want, especially this late in the season when it's only like a week left and you're trying to jockey for position. And that whole thing, with Atlanta and such, I mean, there's no excuse for that loss. And it's sort of like I don't know, Bogdanovich had like 26 points. He's like 4 for like 5 from 3-point range or whatever. And they had to pay, the Bulls had to play catch up from jump. That was a problem. So yeah, like I said, it is what it is with Bulls. I've heard people rant and rave about the Bulls. It is what it is with them this late in the season. They are who we thought they were. So I don't want to get into it, too much, specifics. I want to kind of, go into something else because there actually are some playoff standings and seeds that are at state. So they're the 10 seed. They're not going to get, further up than that. So, we'll get to that in a second. So now let's talk about the rest of the NBA, and we'll talk about last night's games. Phoenix got a nice win against Denver, 119-115. As you listen to Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago. Lakina McGee, Sydney Brown with you. KD, he's getting better, as he gets to recover from that leg injury. He had 29 points and 7 boards and 3 assists, and it's they're trying to get back into that top tier and that 4 spot. So there's a lot of seeding to be figured out here, especially in the West. Now, unfortunately for the Nuggets, I know Juggins didn't play yesterday, but they did their best. I mean, look, it's just like they set a lot of their guys out. Of course, Jokic, Murray, and that kind of thing. So I'm wondering, some people say, did they punt in this game because I guess their seeds they may already have the number 1 seed in the West wrapped up. But if you're the Suns, they're now 8-0 with Durant on the floor. So you can only imagine, what they would be like had he had been, not been injured during that stretch. But, what do you think about that win yesterday by the Suns?
Of course, different punting, and we'll get into the issue of load management on the flip side of this break. But on the flip side for this Phoenix Suns, it was nice to see Chris Paul show up. I know he's been injured off and on this year. He made a career high 7 3-pointers, which that would help. And we'll see if he can continue with that momentum as the playoffs start next weekend. But as you mentioned, Kevin Durant, hopefully he stays healthy. If he does, Phoenix will increase their chances of winning an NBA title. And also, too, they were hot on the outside last night, shooting at 47% clip from beyond the arc. So you're going to need that 3-point shooting, not just from Devin Booker, from Kevin Durant as well. Now Chris Paul starting to hit that. They really become dangerous. But my key player as the playoffs start next weekend for Phoenix, that's DeAndre Ayton. I've been on him all year. He was the third best big man in the league 2 years ago when he faced Giannis in the NBA Finals. He's disappeared over the last year and a half, Lakina. He needs to show up and show why he wants to play all bell rings.
Absolutely, and like I said, the Suns are the 4th seed right now, so they probably will get that regardless. I mean, they'll probably be right there. We may get like maybe a Suns Clippers first round matchup, maybe perhaps. So that should be an interesting first playoff first round there. Now we'll talk about some of the other NBA games from this week, because a lot of them were jockeying for positioning and for playoff spots, and including one team where they're trying to get up there, but it might be too late. Well, we'll talk more about that coming up next. Lakina McGee, Cindy Brown's Second City Sports on Chicago. We'll also recap the men's national championship game as UConn wins their 5th championship in 25 years. So more Hoops Talk coming up next. Lakina McGee, Cindy Brown, Second City Sports on Sports on Chicago. More Hoops Talk coming up right after this.
This year, my mom got me the perfect bag for back to school.
These colorful binders help me stay organized.
These headphones are just what I need for studying.
These new sneakers are just what I need for the new year.
This jacket is a real must-have.
My parents got me the skateboard I wanted. It's pretty cool.
These scissors really come in handy in art class.
These colored pencils, too.
These new socks, they can be a real lifesaver.
I finally got my own phone to stay in touch with my mom.
Trisha's having a sleepover tonight. Can I go?
I wonder about Lucy's friends. What should I say? I know you're only 10, but one of these days a friend will offer you a drink. And alcohol at your age can lead to so many things. None of them good.
So can I go to the sleepover?
Lucy, I want you to promise me
I
something.
finished my homework.
Bigger promise. If there's any drinking, I want you to say, "No thanks, not my thing."
Mom.
I promise you. Your real friends won't care. Deal?
Sure.
Really?
I promise, Mom.
They really do hear you.
Did you pack your toothbrush?
For tips on how to start the talk, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. A public service message from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
Hey, this is Dr. J, and I listen to Sean and Maya in the morning.
Welcome back to a Good Friday edition of Second City Sports. We're live in living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago. I'm Sid, that's Lakina. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, it's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. SIDKID80.
You can follow me at Keita McGee on the Twitter and at Keita McGee on the IG.
We have less than 85 minutes left of this extravaganza we call a Sports Talk Radio Show. You want to hit us up in the comments section, you can do so by going to Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or at Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in your questions or comments in the comments section. Lakina will get them up on the screen for you. Continuing our NBA discussion from the break, Lakina, I don't think we had to discuss much more about this game last night. It was the first game of the TNT doubleheader. I turned to this game for less than 1 minute. I saw the score. I said, nope, I am out. It was the Miami Heat defeating the Philadelphia 76ers in the city of brotherly love, 129-121.
Yeah, I was a little surprised by that score. I mean, maybe Miami probably needed that win more to sort of make sure for their confidence purposes. Tyler Hero had 24, and B had 21. He had his struggles from the field and such. So I'm a little it was sort of weird that game. But like these are sort of we get these weird games, late in the year and whatnot. I mean. Unfortunately, for the Sixers, I mean, they were hoping maybe they can kind of at least get to that, try near that 2C, but, they were, 10 for 35 from 3. That's not going to get it done for you. And, the struggles from the field, Harden only had 14. So definitely, some struggles. And, Miami was able to take advantage of that.
Yeah, as we said all year long about the Miami Heat, someone needs to help out Jimmy Butler in the scoring department. It's been him and Bam Adebayo, those two all year. Like you mentioned, you need Duncan Robinson, Tyler Hero to come through. So if those guys can help Jimmy Butler out, this Miami team can be dangerous come playoff time. And of course, Orlando Magic, they lost to the Cleveland Cavaliers, who basically set out their entire starting five lineups. I was watching some of that game as Cleveland gets it done 118-94. Now I want to go back to Wednesday, Lakina. I did watch the majority of this game live via this computer screen. It was the Sacramento Kings losing in a heartbreaker to the Dallas Mavericks, as the Mavericks, as Lakina was trying to hint before the break, they're trying to stay in the fight for their play-in tournament lives against Oklahoma City. But the Mavericks beat the Kings on Wednesday, 123-119. Kyrie Irving scored 19 of his game-high 31 points in the fourth quarter, including 6 of 10 shooting from downtown. De'Aaron Fox led Sacramento with 28. Lakina, just as you think that the Dallas Mavericks are dead, Kyrie Irving saves the Dallas Mavericks in the fourth quarter.
Yeah. I mean, look, that was a real great fourth quarter comeback by the Mavs, but they're going to have their own issues, this weekend. We'll talk about that in a second. But I mean, look, this whole thing about I think the Mavs knew they needed this win to kind of stay in that playoff chase. They've got 2 games left. We'll see, but. I'm a little, still concerned about it. Like I said, we'll get to that in the second when we talk about the scheduling. But look, I think they needed this win and they got it. So good for them. I think the Kings were kind of, they're sort of like playing with house money. So they probably like, I don't know if they decided to take the game off or maybe Dallas won and more. But like I said, we'll talk a little bit more in a little bit. But going into that Wednesday's game, like I said, they needed that win, a little more than the Kings did, so they were able to do just that. Now the Clippers beat the Lakers as they're now 125-118 after rumors that LeBron was going to sit out. He had 23 points. Norman Powell had 27. So they actually now, I'm talking about the Clippers now have the tiebreaker over the Lakers. So they'll probably get that number 5 spot. And it was sort of like, it was kind of like back and forth for a little bit, but, Clippers did just enough to win that game.
Well, Anthony Davis, don't forget, he played in the back-to-back. I think this is for the second time this year. He only scored 17 points. People can talk about LeBron James all they want to. Whenever he's healthy, he's the best player on the court. He's been the Lakers' best player when healthy all year long. But this team will not go anywhere without the contributions of Anthony Davis. We talked about the supporting cast and Jared Vanderbilt, Austin Reeves, and D'Angelo Russell, but this engine does not start until Anthony Davis decides that he wants to play, and he only has 17 points on the Wednesday. That's not going to get it done. So we're going to see them in the play-in next week. Shout out to the Clippers. They finally did what they had to do. You mentioned, so I talked about looking for the last couple of weeks when Norman Powell was down. And that's when the same time Paul George went down with his injury. Someone was going to have to step up for the Clippers, Eric Gordon, and some of the other guys, Nicholas Batum. But Norman Powell, you see what a difference he makes returning from injury. Of course, hopefully Paul George will return once the playoffs start. But it's Kawhi Leonard and Russell Westbrook and everybody else. And so Norman Powell is the key right now until Paul George comes back.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll see what happens if they can. We'll see if he does talk about PG can come back, after that play-in.
Mhm.
So once the playoffs actually start, so we'll see what happens there. Now I want to talk about this game for a second. You got the Grizzlies and the Pelicans in a thriller. The Pelicans beat the Grizz 138-131, and this is a feat that actually happened twice in the NBA. On Wednesday, Herb Jones had 35 points. Also, too, CJ McCollum had 31, and Trey Murphy the third had 30. So this is actually the third. Trey Murphy the third, I should say, had 30 points and such. McCollum had a double, and so did Brandon Ingram. But this is actually just the first time that's happened. It actually happened twice, having a trio of players from the same team score at least 30 points. That's what happened here. Happened twice. We'll get to the other game that happened in a second. But the fact that they were all kind of the Pelicans, we'll see if they can make some noise in the playoffs. I mean, they've clinched the play-in spot. We'll see. I mean, we won't know who their opponent is just yet. They'll play either the Thunder or the Mavs. That's how they'll move up a spot. But a nice win for the Pelicans on Wednesday.
Yeah, I had a chance to check out some of this game as well. Of course, Memphis sat out a couple of their key stars, including John Morant, but they competed and battled very well. They should have won that game, but they left the crack of the door open just enough for the home team, in referring to the Pelicans, to win the game. Lakina, I said this too a few weeks ago. Brandon Ingram, who's been injured off and on this year, he is the injury that makes that motor run for the New Orleans Pelicans. You talk about C.J. McCollum, you talk about Trey Murphy III, who had a couple of big buckets in that overtime. But if Brandon Ingram stays healthy, this New Orleans team can go. And I know there was some news out there about Zion Williamson, hoping that he could return next week. It looks like it's not going to be for naught. So you got to play the rest of the season without him. Of course, the players knew that, but everybody else was going to have to accept their reality right now. So remember what they did last year without Zion Williamson. They won the play-in tournament to get into the playoffs, and they almost upset the Phoenix Suns in that first round. So this is how they're going to play going into the play-in tournament next week. I do like their chances again at 7th or 8th seed.
Yeah, we'll see what happens if they do, when they do clinch that. But like I said, Zion, they're going to need Zion back. So, we'll see. I don't know if they can go that far in the playoffs. I mean, they did, but, that's you're not having Zion there, came back to bite him in the butt. So, we'll see what happens there. Now, going into that Knicks Pacers game, like I said, I want to talk about this because you had another trio that scored over 30 points. Emmanuel Quigley, Obi Toppin, and Quentin Grimes. Grimes, I believe, had 36, was a career high for him. Quigley had 39, and Toppin had 32. So you got to think that those guys are going to have to pick up the slack with Julius Randle being out for like another couple of weeks. For at least the first couple of games in the playoffs in the main draw. So this is we'll see if they can keep it up, but you're going to need Randle back. If they're talking about you got Knicks fans talking about they want to go to the Eastern Conference Finals. You're going to need him back if they want to do that.
Remember Tom Thibodeau early in the season, Lakina, he didn't want to play guys like Obi Toppin, Derrick Rose, and some of the other veterans that they were signed. Evan Fournier. They weren't getting playing time early in the season. Leon Rose, the new GM, told Tom Thibodeau, do what you see best for this team. Those veterans haven't played much ever since the first of the year. Guys like Obi Toppin, I think he's the third-year guy out of Dayton. He's getting some playing time right now. Just in case Zach Randolph doesn't come back in time for the playoffs, you're going to need young guys like Obi Toppin. And let's see if Tom Thibodeau goes to those aforementioned veterans that the names that came out of my mouth. And so it's going to be a collective team effort for the Knicks as they try to prepare for themselves for the playoffs. And like you say, they may miss Julius Randle may miss a couple of games to start the playoffs. But you mentioned Emmanuel Quigley. He's going to have to come through. R.J. Barrett's going to have to come through. Jalen Brunson, who's still playing with that foot injury, even though he's returned from the assistant last couple of weeks, is going to be a collective team effort for New York.
Yeah, we'll see what happens there. You don't want to be in the 0-2 hole if Randall does end up only missing a first couple of games of the playoffs. You don't want to be down 0-2. You want to at least have like a split. So we'll see what happens there. Going back to Tuesday, you got Phoenix being the Spurs, the Warriors. Of course, we know that win against OKC actually helped the Mavs. Mavs are only like a half game back. They only have one game left. We'll talk about OKC. We'll get to that in a second. The Lakers beat Utah in overtime, 135-133.
Blew a 10-point lead late. I was watching some of that.
Yeah. Jazz made it interesting for a little bit.
Yeah.
In that fourth quarter. Kings beat the Pelicans. The Grizzlies beat Portland. Philly beats Boston, but that doesn't really matter because Boston's gonna get the 2 seed, and of course, and the Sixers get the 3, so it really that win really didn't matter. Cleveland beat Orlando. Of course, Donovan Mitchell had another 43 points in that game. So also too, going back to that Kings game against the Pelicans, Domantas Sabonis had another triple-double. That's his 13th this season. That's the most of the season by a Kings/Royals player. Remember the old Royals since the Big O did it back in 1965.
Yeah, Rochester Royals. Yep.
Yeah,
the Big O, Oscar Robinson.
1965, 1966, but they were the Rochester Royals, as Sid just mentioned. So a nice showing here for the NBA now. Going into these last 2 days of the season, we're starting with tonight, Friday. You got we'll go through really quick. The Rockets and the Hornets, Pistons, and that doesn't mean anything. Neither does Miami or Washington. The Sixers in Atlanta, Toronto and Boston, and Orlando and Brooklyn at 6:30.
Yeah, finishing up tonight's schedule. Friday, Grizzlies at the Bucks. That's the first game of the NBA TV Friday night doubleheader. Remember, ESPN has the coverage of the Masters. We'll talk about that in our next hour. The New York Knicks visiting the New Orleans Pelicans at 7 o'clock. Bigger game for the Pelicans than for the Knicks. At 9 o'clock, we'll have Golden State at Sacramento. Let's see if Sacramento, they need to win their next 2 games to assure themselves a 50-win season. They already are in the playoffs as the 3rd seed, I believe. And so we'll see if they can reach 50 wins by the time the regular season ends on Sunday. In the second half of the NBA TV doubleheader tonight, we'll have Phoenix visiting the Lakers. Well, I think we'll finally get to see KD versus LeBron. We hope.
Finally. Yeah, finally. I think that's happening. It's on the NBA TV. So if you guys have NBA TV, please check your local your cable or satellite provider for that. Now tomorrow there's only 3 games, so you got Denver and Utah at 2:30. You got to assume that Jokic and Murray and the others will not be playing this game either.
And Utah's eliminated from playoff contention.
Right, so I think that's going to be mostly their second-tier guys, T-Wolves and Spurs, and Portland and the Clippers. At 3 o'clock. Both games are at 3 o'clock. So,
And Sunday, the regular season finale looks like this. All games are occurring at 12 o'clock or 2:30. So everybody's playing on the last day of the season. So the schedule are as follows. So bear with us here. These all games starting at 12 noon on Sunday. We have Detroit playing the Chicago Bulls at the UC. Of course, the first game of the ESPN Sunday doubleheader will feature Atlanta at Boston. Also at noon, Philadelphia at Brooklyn. Expect some players to sit for that game. Also at high noon, Charlotte at Cleveland, Orlando at Miami, the Pacers at the Knicks. Probably some guys will be sitting there review the New York Knicks. And at high noon, we have Milwaukee at Toronto and Houston at Washington. That doesn't matter. At 2:30, we'll have San Antonio at Dallas.
Let me do the 2:30 ones. I'll save some games.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Here's looking with the 2:30 schedules.
Oh Lord, okay, we're doing it like that. All right, Spurs and Dallas. Of course, Dallas really need this win at 2:30. Pelicans and T-Wolves. I mean, it's more for seniors. I think a lot of their guys are going to sit out. Memphis and OKC, guys, assume that a lot of the top guys from Memphis, John Morant and some of the other guys, they'll probably be sitting. So this is a very important game for OKC. They win. They're in Sacramento and Denver. I think everybody's going to sit out for this game. So also at 2:30, you got Utah and the Lakers. Yeah, that's the second game of that ESPN Sunday doubleheader. The Clippers and the Suns, I think that a lot of their guys are going to sit out too on both ends. And Golden State and Portland also at 2:30. So that's the last of those games. That's the last games of the regular season. As I think it's wrapping up, and seeding. A lot of things still to be figured out though.
Yeah, that Sunday game with the Mavericks and Spurs, that could be the clincher for the Dallas Mavericks, but they must beat the Bulls tonight for that to happen. So there could be a big game for Dallas on Sunday. You're listening to Second City Sports.
They just posted on their feed that neither Kyrie, Tim Hardaway Jr., Christian Wood, and a couple of guys aren't playing tonight. So
watch the Bulls will still lose, so it probably won't matter.
yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see, but yeah.
You listening to Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago. I'm Sid. That's Lakina. You listening to a special Good Friday edition. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, at SidKid80. You can follow Lakina on the Twitter at Keena McGee. Once again, at Keena McGee on the Twitter. Lakina, let's we give our wrap up of the 2023 March Madness tournament as the UConn Huskies, Dan Hurley and crew, they take down the San Diego State Aztecs 76-59 in the championship game last Monday night in the city of Houston, Texas, I should say. San Diego State, they struggled scoring throughout the game. They kind of made a game of it late, but UConn has been known in this tournament to get off to slow starts. But in the second half, they turned it on, including Jordan Hawkins, and they followed their same script last Monday to capture their 5th title in school history.
Yeah, it's their 5th title, like I said before the break. For the 5th title in 25 seasons. We'll get to their accomplishments in that front in a second because that's huge what they just did. Now, remember, San Diego State didn't score for, I think, almost 11 or 12 minutes. So just when you thought that they got it down to 6, but Hawkins, made a couple of big 3-pointers. Andre Jackson made a couple of 3-pointers as well to kind of slam the door on that. Our buddy Adamo Sanogu had a double-double. This is another double-double that he had. He won most outstanding player honors, and I think it wasn't the best game that we've had. Was it better than the Kansas North Carolina game? No, it wasn't, but it wasn't as terrible as the third championship they won where they beat Butler. That game was terrible. And that game was awful. So
let's have basketball back 200 years.
That game was bad, but 17-10 for us. Sanogu, and his story is fascinating because he's from Mali originally, and he was actually supposed to go to France, since he was leaving his parents and the rest of his family, but decided to go to the States instead. Went to high school there, graduated, and Dan Hurley actually ended up recruiting him to go to UConn and such, and he ended up winning. Going all Big East, and now has the most outstanding player honor. So a lot of younger contributions from other guys as well. We talk about Jordan Hawkins. He had 16 points. Terrence Newton had, Tristan Newton, I should say, had 19 points. That's his best game this season. He hit some big shots late for them as well. So a great. And I told people this before. I mean, people got to remember that this is a problem I have when folks don't watch college hoops till in February or actually as the tournament's about to start.
Right as the Super Bowl.
Right. And this is a UConn team that I saw earlier the year where they went 14-0 in non-conference. They got all the way up to number 2 in the country, only behind Alabama. They took the lumps in the Big East. I mean, they had some questionable losses. They lost to Villanova. And people thought that no one had them on their radar as perhaps maybe a chance to win the national championship. But look, they went back to the basics. They did defense. They had they did struggle a little bit from 3, but they did just enough, and it didn't help that San Diego State wasn't shooting the ball well from there either. So that helped them out a little bit. And they were able to kind of hunker down on defense, and so that's number 5 for them. And this is an interesting stat here. They now have a national championship they've won in the 90s, the 2000s, 2010s, and now the 2020s. They just they're right near North Carolina. They joined North Carolina as the only program to win a national title in 4 straight decades. So I'll give you the floor, Sid. What did you think about their performance on Monday?
Yeah, it's pretty much what I expected, Lakina. San Diego State, first of all, they did enough just to beat Florida Atlantic last Saturday, so they gutted that game out. UConn, I know they're not the greatest team, but as I mentioned, they usually turn it around in the second half. That's been their trend in this tournament, and they did the same thing. You just mentioned that was the game right there. They had, I believe I saw a stat that said 8 minutes or 3 minutes or more without scoring the field goal. As you mentioned, they went about 11 minutes without scoring. I said to myself, that's the game right there. That was the game. You're going to have droughts, but you go almost a whole half a half, because there's 20 minutes to have. you almost go half a half without scoring, you're not going to win many ball games. And so, shout out to UConn. They put the press on late after San Diego State made their run, and they made the plays down the stretch when they had to. San Diego State just didn't have enough offense in the team to keep up with UConn. Not saying that UConn is terrible, because obviously they're not. Give them their props, but they weren't this overwhelming team. San Diego State could have done more now, whether it was the pressure of the moment or just basically just give UConn their props. They did what they had to do, and San Diego State just couldn't get out of their own way. But for whatever reason, San Diego State just couldn't get it done. Shouts out to UConn.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, interesting you said that, because I think, look, I mean, if only they had, that scoring job really didn't do them any favors. So, that whole thing was just not a good look for San Diego State. But look, they got a lot to be proud of. They made it to their first Final Four, made all the way to the championship game. They've got nothing to be, to be ashamed of. They got a lot. They accomplished a lot this year. So, Brian Brucher and his guys should be very proud. Now, as far as UConn is concerned, they have a top 5 class coming in. So we'll see if Hawkins stays or if Sanogo. So I'm assuming that a couple of them will stay. I know Andre Jackson Jr. has said that he's going to stay too. So you got a lot of their guys coming back, plus a top 5 recruiting class. So you probably say they overachieve, win the championship. But look, they're still like the second, favorite to repeat. We'll see what happens when the transfer portals and such. But look, Dan Hurley, you guys know his story, and kind of. He was teaching high school basketball when he got the job at UConn, did coach in the college race for a little bit. But, he kind of got back into it. He kind of went back to basics. He said his wife kind of encouraged him to kind of like just, not to change. And he and Jordan Hawkins during the pandemic year, which was 2020, of course, they kind of said, okay, let's see what we can do to kind of build this program back up. And look, that's what they did. They got Sanogo, they got, they got our buddy, Klingon, Darren Klingon, that's our buddy Mike Chen's got Donovan Klingon, I should say. That's our buddy Mike Chen's guy. He's only a freshman. He's 7'2", can shoot the 3. So you got to think he's only going to get better and have more muscle in him. So look, they could very well end up, repeating. Like I said, it's hard to do. No one's done it since the 06, 07 with Florida, but not saying they could do it. They can't do it, but of course it's going to be hard.
Yeah, I want to ask you real quick, Lakina, about this UConn team. I mean, many folks have compared them to be. Are they officially a part of the blue blood group of college basketball? You mentioned they won 5 championships in the last 25 years. Yes, they're in the Big East Conference now. Let's not say that this is a garbage or walk in the park program. They were part of the original Big East back in the day when all these teams were good. Georgetown, Syracuse, and St. John's, when they ruled New York City. And so this program has been around for a long time. So I know it's on the outskirts of New York City. They're in a small state. I get it. But this program has been successful in the corner of our lives. So I think they are part of the Blue Bloods. I know some people want to compare them to that Florida team in the early 2000s with Joakim Noah, Al Horford, Corey Brewer, and Taurine Green, some of those guys. I don't think UConn has those guys, but let's be honest here too. The nature of college basketball has changed, even from those back-to-back Florida national championship teams.
Yeah, look where they're at now. I mean, they're right there. They've got more than Duke. Well, no, they don't have more than Duke now, but they're kind of right there with Kansas and with the most with 5. And then, of course, ahead of them, you got North Carolina, and then you got UCLA. Well, Kentucky, and then UCLA after them. So, yeah, they're definitely a blue blood. I mean, yeah, there have been some times where they didn't make the tournament, for a couple of years. They kind of had their struggles a little bit, but the one thing they've had is consistency. And look, I don't know when the next time. I think a few years, the Final Four will be in another city in Texas. I think it's going to be in San Antonio in a few years. This is their 4th national championship they've won in Texas. They're third in Houston. So maybe, next time they have the Final Four in Texas, maybe you should bet on UConn, I guess. So they love playing the championship, the NCAA championship, games and such in Texas. So yeah, I mean, look, they're definitely a blue blood. I mean, look, it's not like that this team came out of nowhere. I mean, look, when Jim Calhoun, we talked about it with, sad when Clifford Robertson passed away. He was one of the first stars there. He got him to stay. Where look, Jim Calhoun got him to stay there. Clifford Robertson to stay there. When he could have easily have left. Then of course they won the postseason NIT, hit his senior year, talking about Clifford Robinson. Then after that, things started building. He started getting those top recruits. I'm talking about Coach Calhoun. We got Rip Hamilton, Scotty Burrell, among others, and
Ray Allen.
Mecca Okafor, and of course, so that was definitely that team. Khalid El-Amin, of course, they were part of that 99 team that upset Duke. 98 team, I should say, upset Duke, which I still don't get why that was an upset, but okay. But they had Kevin Ollie and all that, so they transpired after him. But then Coach Hurley comes back, comes and leads into glory too. So yeah, I think UConn's definitely a blue button. And look, between their men's and women's teams, are now only 6-1 in national championship games, and I think the men are 5-0 now. So they know what to do. I mean, look, like I said, this UConn team I saw the UConn team earlier this season. The 14-0, grinding out. They'll all shoot you. They'll all hustle you, and that's exactly what they did. So you gotta give them props.
Yeah, you have to give props to UConn. They were the most consistent team all year. Again, we talked about it early in the year when they were up in the top 5 in the AP poll rankings. Not when many people are paying attention, because as we mentioned, the college basketball landscape is changing with the NIL rules and the transfer portal, which really has busted it open. UConn has taken advantage of that. Who's to say they can't take advantage of it next year? You may have a crew that's not happy.
Exactly.
If Dan Hurley can get one of those guys that can help them, why not? As our guy Jerry Payne for WGN TV in Chicago says, it's open season now, so it's all out in the open. So who's to say that they can't do it again next year?
Right, absolutely. Like you said, I mean, there are a couple of guys that could use their services, at UConn. So yeah, I think definitely, especially if Jordan Hawkins decides to leave for the NBA, and I don't think he will, but because he has another year. So yeah, we'll see about that. But yeah, I think could they win? Sure. Will they? That's going to be tough. But like I said, I think let's give them a little bit. I know people want to. The ratings are pretty good for the men's tournament. So I'm not sitting here and say that I want to call those folks out first. I know we're up against it, but apparently, I guess people like upsets, but they don't want to see upsets. If you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, like 15 million saw the men's championship game, which is still pretty good. If you're CBS, you'll take it. So that it is what it is. We'll talk more about that. We'll talk about our girl Christine and then her.
Yeah, because I'm gonna say my comments for the women's tournament for Christine. I want to get her thoughts on it as well. So I'll say my women's thoughts for that, because like you said, we're up against it for the top of the hour.
Yeah, we'll talk about Jim Nance too as well. Of course, did his final men's national championship game. We'll talk about all that. We're gonna talk some baseball and some good news health wise for the White Sox and the Cubs are playing again for the first time. It seems like about a week. Yeah, but we'll talk more about that, and also too some other baseball nuggets and such. Coming up next, of course, we got our girl Christine Manica and her fiance Chris. Talk some of the hottest topics in all the sports, I should say, coming up this hour. So yeah, a lot to do still. Lakina McGee, Sydney Brown says he's Sports on Chicago. The Diamond coming up right after this.
No, I don't know though. I'm scared. I mean,
Do you know that you're in my lane? No, not at all. Are you not paying attention? Are you texting? I was just checking in with my mom. I was telling her that I thought we'd be home by 6. It's okay. There's enough time. Just pay attention. I'm not even halfway through my text. There's no way. I'm not even going to look up. My babies are in the car. You have to pay attention. It's just supposed to be a quick text. I'm so sorry.
Hi, I'm Tom Brady, the director of DODEA. September is National Suicide Prevention and Awareness Month. The simple act of reaching out and caring for those in our communities is something we all can do. Just being there for someone you care about can be a tremendous first step in getting them access to confidential resources and support that they need. It only takes one person and one small act and 1 minute to make a difference. Let's make a difference.
Move it!
Few will earn the title. United States Marine. The few, the proud, the Marines.
Welcome back to hour number 2 of this Good Friday edition of Second City Sports. We're live in living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago, along with Miss Lakeem McGee, which is she. I am Sydney Brownhead. That's me. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter and the IG at CK80. Once again, at CK80. That's SIDKID80. SIDKID80.
You can follow me at Keenan McGee on the Twitter and at Keenan McGee on the IG.
We have less than 55 minutes left of this extravaganza we call a Sports Talk Radio Show. You have any questions or comments for us, you can always hit us up in the comments section at Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or at Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in your questions or comments in the comments section. Lakina will get them up on the screen for you. And just a daily reminder, you can also catch Sports Zone Chicago now available on Roku TV.
All right, Sid, let's talk some baseball for a second. We'll start with the
Sox. I think.
Well, depending on how you look at it. Unfortunately, the Sox lose their series to the Giants. I know you went to the first game on Monday. We won't talk about that. Michael Kopech, I think, gave up about 6 runs or some home runs or something like that. So that
he was bad. He was serving up bad in practice. That's just being polite.
Well, yeah, right. So, that was that was not a good look there. And then unfortunately yesterday's game, of course, luckily, Dylan Cease, picked it up and, got them to kind of, position Andrew Vaughn to a couple of big home runs and RBIs. So, they were able to, win that game, but, they were off on Tuesday and then, they got back into it on Wednesday. But now, of course, unfortunately they lose a tough one to the Giants. Losing the series there. Sid, I mean, they kind of went back to the bad habits, leaving guys on base. I know Tim Anderson got, caught a couple of times, without calling the timeouts and all that other stuff. I mean, they lose 16-6, that rubber match game. Lance Lynn, not his best, showing. Unfortunately, we saw the spring training Lance Lynn, and that's not good. So what'd you think about the Sox this week?
Yeah, the San Francisco Giants, I didn't know Barry Bonds returned. I didn't know Jeff Kemp returned. I didn't know that Richard Rillia returned. I didn't think Dusty Baker would make an appearance. So it seems like these current 2023 Giants played like those late 90s, early 2000s San Francisco Giants teams. Belting out 13 home runs in the series. You mentioned the 7, giving up 6 of them by Kopech on last Monday. Of course, Lance Lynn didn't help his matters yesterday as the Giants blasted him for some more home runs. I know people want to ask or get concerned about Kopech or Lance Lynn. I think Kopech just had a bad outing. It was just bad timing. So we're going to see what his next start is going to be like. I think he pitches on Sunday. I got to look at the matchups for this weekend as the Sox will play the Pittsburgh Pirates starting today. Lance Lynn, I'm kind of worried about him a little bit. I think he will eventually turn it around. Remember last Friday, Lakina, he did well for the first 5 innings. Got into some trouble in the 6th before he was yanked down. Of course, the bullpen blew it for him. But outside of that, Dylan Cease is what saved them so far this year. I know the Sox are 3-4. 2 of those 3 victories belong to Dylan Cease. And Dylan Cease, according to reports, wasn't feeling well on Wednesday. But if I'm going to get that, if he's not feeling well, I like my chances, okay? As we said last year, starting pitching is not the problem for the White Sox. Is leaving guys on base. We saw that plenty of times last year when they had that piss-poor philosophy of offense, of hitting singles and not even butting guys. But like I said, I don't want to go back into last year. But Their problem is not scoring enough runs. As I tweeted out, I think it was yesterday or it was during the Wednesday's game.
Wednesday's
The LSD start. Finally, the bats have woken up. Now they can start doing that consistently. They'll be fine. I still have some faith in this team. I'm not saying I'm not concerned. I'm not going to jump off a bridge of folks thinking I'm just going to do that. I'm a happily happily disappoint you there, but. The Sox just got to be more consistent getting runners over at home plate. They can get them on, but you got to get them across the home plate. That's the name of the game. The defense has been okay. The stolen base, as you mentioned, I saw a couple times they got caught red-handed, but the stolen bases have been okay. The defense has been more than okay. It's been slightly above average. Benintendi's been fine. Luis Robert has been great playing center field. And no trouble in right field so far, whether it's Romy Gonzalez or the rookie Oscar Colas. I really like him. And so he's really been coming on right now. So there's not too much to complain about the White Sox outside those two bad starts in that Giants series.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think, look, they're under 500 right now. We knew that this was going to be a struggle for the Sox. They were going to have, games where they would probably leave guys on base. So, yeah, look, I want to kind of, you don't want to make assumptions, especially you're only a week, just a little over a week into the season. So a lot can happen. So we'll see what happens with them now. As far as the Cubs are concerned, they didn't they didn't play the rubber match against the Reds because of rain. So that's going to be rescheduled as a doubleheader in late September. But they were able to at least split, after losing a tough one that first game. They came back, and dominated, won the second game of that series, 12-5. And of course, Dansby Swanson so far is living up to that contract. He's already had like 3 home runs so far, and about like 5 or 6 RBIs already. The pitch has been a little inconsistent. I think the bullpen definitely blew it for them on Monday. They had a big lead and they were it evaporated, unfortunately. So that's why they were able to lose that game against the Reds, but they were able to bounce back, and they were able to have the bat sort of lead the way there in that game on Tuesday. Of course, like I said, they weren't able to play yesterday on Wednesday, I should say. So they played Texas, where we'll get to that in a second, because it's gonna one of those games is actually gonna be with us right now. So, but yeah, so I think that as far as like the Cubs, I mean, look, Swanson's look good. Cody Bellinger, we're starting to see the old Cody Bellinger from a couple years ago when the Dodgers won the World Series. We'll see if they can keep it up. The pitch has actually been sort of like a big thing. Sometimes the starting pitches have been good. It's been the bullpen. Sometimes the starting pitcher gets into a hole and the bullpen has to dig out of that hole. So far, as you got David Ross making some questionable decisions too, but I think in this case, they're kind of where I thought they would be at this point in the season. But like I said, we're really like a weekend. They've only played like 5 games, so it really 6 games, I should say. So yeah, they only played 5 games, so it's hard to kind of make this analysis of the Cubs so far.
Yeah, I think that's where most people expected them to be right now at the 5 games, 2-3, as this team's trying to figure out themselves what their identity is. I was really looking forward to that game on Wednesday. It was supposed to be Hunter Green for Cincinnati versus Marcus Stroman of the Cubs. So two Black American pitchers facing each other. Of course, Hunter Green doesn't get the prize because Cincinnati is terrible, but that young man has great stuff. I believe he's in his 3rd year, in the major leagues. I think his 3rd year. So he's another rising star in our game. So hopefully he can keep it up, but hopefully Cincinnati can be competitive once he reaches his potential. But you mentioned with the bunt situation the other night, Lakina, Patrick Wisdom butting. I didn't get that call, but in a way is good to see that their fans, in particular Cub fans, are critical of David Ross's moves. I know that David Ross wants to win like anybody else who has competed as a player at a high level, not managing at a high level. I think it's great for Cubs fans to be critical because you expect your team to be competitive this year. So I don't think the criticism was too harsh on why he told Patrick Wisdom to butt, but that's besides the point. But I like the way that the Cubs bats came out on Monday. You mentioned Trey Mancini with 3 RBI. Ian Happ had an RBI. Patrick Wisdom, as I mentioned, the 3 RBI himself. Eric Hosman, 2 RBI. I know some people say when is he going to get released? I don't want to talk about that right now, but he looked good on Monday. So the Cubs took advantage of bad Reds pitching, and that's what we saw in their last game. So it's not too much you can complain about right now. I know they're facing Texas right now as we speak. I know today's game is on Apple TV Plus. So for those of you that have Apple TV Plus and have that buy that package, you can watch that game right now. Just turn the sound down and listen to us, and we'll get you. And we'll get you through it. But it's not too much to complain if you're the Cubs.
No.
If you expected them to be 4-1 or 5-0, you're crazy.
Yeah, you'll take your 2 and 3 and such, and like we said, some questionables, so they could probably be 3 and 2, but it is what it is. So if you're a Cubs fan, you shouldn't be too upset about what's been going on. They've actually been pretty solid this year, so we just need to get the consistency going and maybe have the bullpen and the batting question with the bunting and such. I mean, I know the Sox went through that a couple of times last year with the bunting situation, so it's just the opposite. But we'll see what happens there. Now, I will, as your second state sports on Chicago, Keenan McGee, Sydney Brown with you. I would have to say probably like early on. I know it's been like 5 or 6 games, for some and 7 games in some cases. But I gotta say, Will Smith, no, not the actor Will Smith. This Will Smith already has 10 RBI in his first 5 games this year. That's tied for the third most through a player's first 5 games of the season in Dodgers history. He's one of the reasons why the Dodgers are 5-2 right now. So for me, that's kind of been like sort of like the big, like super early assessment so far, a week into the season. What about you?
Speaking of the NL Central, the Milwaukee Brewers had their home opener on Monday. They swept away the New York Mets, winning all 3 games. Terrain hit his first career home run in the opener, but his first career home run was a grand slam. That was an awesome moment, of course. Mitchell had that game-winning home run on Wednesday as the Brewers swept the Mets. And did you check out that radio call by the great Bob Uecker, aka Mr. Belvedere, from the 80s? Was you our age and older, you remember him? He was on that TV show back in the day. He's still doing it strong for WTMJ in Milwaukee, the Brewers radio flagship station. That was a great radio call. So the Brewers are off to a nice start. The Cardinals, they kind of been up and down through their first 6-7 games of the year with the Blue Jays. I know they took care of the Blue Jays, but they struggled against Atlanta at home. And so I was looking at that. The Yankees, they took care of the Phillies this week. The Blue Jays, after losing on Monday, they took care of the Royals the last 2 games. The Baltimore Orioles, I didn't pick them to go to the playoffs this year, but they took care of Boston over the weekend, and they took care of Texas down there earlier this week as well. I'm not saying they're going to win the American League East or anything like that, but even though it's a small sample size, they're telling people last year was not a fluke.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was good to see them doing that. Now, one team I'm disappointed because we're only like a weekend, but my Mariners only 2-5. They lost a couple of tough ones in that stretch.
Oh, Shohei Ohtani start on Wednesday. He got called not once but twice with the clock violations.
Right. I think both with pitching and hitting. So I guess no rivalry there. But going back to my Mariners for a second, I mean, they lost a couple of tough series, and so they're 2-5. I'm not too worried about them. I mean, I think they'll be okay. I think they're sort of adjusting to perhaps maybe they're no longer being the hunters, now they're the hunted. So I guess they kind of have to adjust, and I think they will figure it out. So I'm not too worried about the Mariners. So look, I mean, we'll see how long the Rays can stay up at the top. I mean, they're 4-2 right now, but the Mariners, I mean, I'm not too worried about them. I mean, they lost the series against the Guardians. They lost 3 out of 4 there. They lost 2 out of 3 against the Angels. Like you said, Sid, that Wednesday game where Ohtani got called not once but twice. So they get the Guardians again. We'll get to the rest of the weekend series in a second, but look at the Tampa Bay Rays. They're the only team in the MLB that's undefeated right now. So again, can it keep it up? We'll see. But I'm liking what I'm seeing from the Rays so far too.
Yeah, as we mentioned, Tampa Bay, they don't have any big boppers in Atlanta, but they still have fundamentally sound players with Yander Diaz, who they sent to a big contract. Shane McClanahan, who's one of the tough start pitchers, their left-hander, he's back from injury. So they have some players that just know their roles. They know how to play the game right, and they play fundamentally sound baseball. That's why they're competitive and always in the playoffs consistently almost every year. So if you follow the game of baseball very closely, you're not too surprised at what Tampa Bay is doing right now. Will they go undefeated for the whole year? No, but you got to give Kevin Cash, their field manager, credit for not just getting those guys motivated, but using them in the right way.
Yeah, absolutely. So Yeah, we'll see. They can keep it up and talking about the Rays. We'll see what happens
Mhm.
there. Now, shout out to David Dahl and Han-Sung Kim, who on Monday they hit back-to-back home runs to give the Padres and win over the D-backs. And the Padres had never had back-to-back home runs in the game. Dahl tied it, of
Mhm.
course. Kim, that was a great call by the radio network down over there in San Diego. So you gotta think that a lot of people, want saying it to be up there with the Dodgers this year. So we'll see if they can do it. I mean, the paying and stuff, they're in third right now behind the Giants. So we'll see if they can figure it out. And like I said, these things will probably change before the month's over with. So I think anybody, if your favorite team, you're worried about them right now, like Seattle and St. Louis, I don't think you should worry too much about them.
Speaking of bottom feeder teams that did well this week, the Detroit Tigers, they took 2 or 3 from the Houston Astros. As you mentioned, the Houston Astros are struggling to start the year with injuries, in particular to Jose Altuve from the World Baseball Classic. They split with the White Sox last weekend. They lose 2 or 3 to the Tigers at home. Also, the Miami Marlins, they take 2 or 3 from the Minnesota Twins. Minnesota was one of those teams that won the first 4 games of the year, but they lost their last 2 to the Miami Marlins. It's really sad. I'm really sad for the Miami Marlins fans. They sold that place out during the World Baseball Classic, but outside of opening day and a couple of interleague opponents, they can't fill their stadium up. But that franchise really has done a disservice for their fans, not putting a competitive team out there on the field. That's one of the reasons why Derek Jeter left, but we'll save that conversation for another time. But shouts out to the Miami Marlins for taking 2 out of 3 from the Minnesota Twins. In the Athletics, just even though they lost the series, Cleveland is still rolling right now. They take 2 out of 3 from the Oakland Athletics. So there's some of the big action that was going on this week from the world of baseball.
Yeah, going back to that that Marlins Twins series, Sandy Alcantara, who you gotta think his name is going to be being floated around with trade talks later this summer. He had a complete game shutout in that Tuesday game. And since 2018, he now has 4 complete game shutouts, bringing a 6-way tie for the most in MLB over that span. So, like I said, Alcantara, a name that could be on the move later this summer. So, if your team's going to be competing and hoping for his services, you want him to keep playing well and stay injury free.
Yeah, and going back to the Detroit Tigers, look, I don't know if you checked it out yesterday. I did watch some of this game in the beginning live via my extra innings package on MLB.tv. The Detroit Tigers are celebrating Miguel Cabrera. This is his last season. This is his last year in the big leagues. Of course, he's playing for the Tigers. And they had him come out with Ben Wallace, who's now a basketball Hall of Famer from the Detroit Pistons days. Who else was out there? Nick Lidstrom, your guy for the Detroit Dead Wings.
Yes.
And I think they had
Calvin in a couple of years. Calvin Johnson was there too. Yep.
Yes, Calvin Johnson for the Detroit Lions. Yep. Yeah, they had all 4 of the current Detroit sports legends throw out the first pitch for opening day. I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, I saw. Yeah, our buddy Ryan Field actually saw on his Twitter feed last night, I should say, and that was a pretty cool moment to see all 4 Detroit legends. You got to think maybe I'm sure we'll get in after he retires. So in a few years. So I'm sure that was a really cool moment. And look, that's my guy Lidstrom. Yeah, I had a crush on him, and I liked him. He was actually my favorite Detroit Red Wing. So I'm not afraid to admit that as a
you like Sergei Fedorov or Steve Yzerman? Weiserman.
Oh yeah, well, yeah, but I like them too. But yeah, Lidstrom, I think that was my guy. So yeah, Fedorov was up there too. But yeah, Nick Lidstrom was it for me. But anyway, on that awkward note, well, let's talk about the games coming up this weekend. So some of the series, of course, as Sid said, the Rangers Cubs games on Apple TV Plus right now as we speak. So for those of you in Chicago and in Arlington, you're not gonna be able to watch this game anywhere on television, so you gotta stream it on Apple TV Plus. The Marlins and the Mets, that should be a fun series. That's also going on right now.
The makeup game from yesterday, the home opener for the Mets is going on right now. Mets lead 2-0 at the top of the 4th.
And the Yankees and Baltimore, those two had some great series last season, so that should be a fun series. You got the Reds and the Phillies. The first game there is at 2:05. The Mariners and the Guardians, that should be a fun one at 3:10. That's the first game of that that weekend series. Got Houston and Minnesota. And of course, the Sox and the Pirates. That's who they play this week. I'm talking about the White Sox. You catch the first game streaming on ESPN Plus. And Kansas City and San Francisco. That should be interesting. Well, Kansas City actually scored. They've actually scored runs this year. Yay! So,
yeah, Bobby Witt Jr. Bobby.
yeah, finally. So you know, that series starts at 3:35 today.
Yeah, and picking up the rest of the schedule for today and for this weekend, we'll have Oakland at Tampa Bay. We'll have San Diego at Atlanta. That's the second game of the Apple TV Plus doubleheader for tonight. Tonight's series opener will start at 6:20 p.m. Central Standard Time. That's on Apple TV Plus. Cardinals and Brewers, that NL Central hot rivalry. It'll be the first edition this weekend in Milwaukee. We'll have Washington at Colorado. That's the second game of that 4-game series. Of course, yesterday Colorado won their home opener 1-0. Shout out to our girl, friend of the show, Miss Susie Hunter. She does a great job covering the Rockies for D and VR Sports out there in Denver. Of course, we're at Toronto and Los Angeles to take on the Angels and the Dodgers and the Diamondbacks tonight. That's they continue that 4-game series this weekend. Of course, your Nationals TV schedule for this weekend for tomorrow, Saturday, on national television at 6:10 p.m. tomorrow on ESPN Plus. That's Cardinals and Brewers. And then, of course, Sunday night baseball will have San Diego at Atlanta. That's at 6 o'clock.
Also to FS1, of course, you'll have the Cubs hosting the Rangers. So again, no local television again, but at least you'll get it on FS1. So you know, you guys.
Yeah, Kenny Albert will be on the call tomorrow.
Right? Yeah. Oh, that should be a lot of fun. Also, too, on ESPN Plus, you got the last game of the Reds and Phillies game at 12:05 on ESPN Plus, and that is your schedule for this week in MLB. Weekend in MLB, I should say.
Yes. You're listening to Second City Sports on the Fun Friday Fun, Good Friday edition right here on Sports Zone Chicago. I'm Sid. That's Lakina. Let's bring in our good friend. She's entering her bi-weekly territory of great sports commentary, entertainment, and more. She's our homegirl from KXRB in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. So Dakota, here comes our homegirl, Miss Christine, the Queen, Manika. What up, Christine?
Are we?
Hello.
Oh, there we are.
There we are. Yeah, your screen went black for a second. I was like, someone kidnapped Christine.
We'll tell her.
There we go.
I think. Oh, there we are. Okay. Oh, yeah. We had like slight delay for a second there, but yeah, of course. Well, what's up? How are you? I think we're having issue. I think it might be the Wi-Fi. We're having an issue with the Wi-Fi there. It looks like. Wait. Oh shoot. Live television, folks. So yeah. Go away and come back, Christine. Maybe that's it. Maybe just have to do a refresh. Here. As we
probably. I love this.
Yeah, good old technology. What can you do? 2023 with technology. But as we get her back into it. But yeah, I think for me, I think the pitch clock and all that other stuff. We get Chrissy's thoughts on that when she comes back on with us. But it's definitely kind of like helped a lot of it because I haven't seen a lot. Even the games that seem long, don't seem long at all, which is a little crazy.
Yeah, we talked about this, Lakina, during spring training. There were 69 to 70 violations in terms of the pitch clock, but players and other veterans alike we're trying to we're getting used to the new rule changes. I know some people say they want to modify those rules. Maybe you'll see that as the season goes along. But Lakina, I'm not too surprised at this because, as we said, this rule, one of those rules where the pitch clock, it was instituted in the minor leagues for the last couple of years. So all you young guys, 25 and under, who've been in the minor leagues for the last couple of years, they're used to this rule. Is the veterans that have to get used to this rule. As we said, Lakina, we may see some trouble through the first month and a half of the season as people get used to it. But I think it will even itself out by the All-Star break, maybe a little bit sooner than that. But for the first month and a half, I'm not too surprised at this. But I know it's even on Monday, Lakina, I was able to get home by 6:30 from opening day because, the Sox pushed the start back due to the rain. But I was out there right before 5 o'clock. So these games are averaging 2.5 to 2 hours and 45 minutes. I think after all this, I think I said this before the season started, I think these games will average between 245 and 250 once all is said and done, once we really get going here. So like you said, Lakina, even some of the games that seemed long, like that Atlanta-San Diego game last night. It wasn't really that long at all. It was almost close to 3 hours, maybe a tad bit over, but it really didn't seem long.
Right, it didn't feel long either. Like I said, even with the games that you thought would be a little long, would feel long, but that's not the case. So we just see what happens there. But now I think our girl is back. Now let's try this again. Okay, yeah, I think we're all set here. Okay, Christy, what's up?
Hello.
There we go. Yeah.
There we go.
Ah.
Yeah, I think that was a little bit of a delay for a second there. So I'm glad we got that figured out. But how are you?
I am great. How are you guys?
We're doing just fine. Doing just fine. We were talking about the pitch clock and the pace of play for baseball. We saw some of the kinks throughout spring training. So far through the first week of the season, we've seen an average of 2.5 hours to 2 hours and 45 minutes, 250 in some cases. What do you think about the pace of play so far in baseball?
I think it's great. I think it's good to get, especially the younger generations, more caught up with this sport and to keep them engaged. On the other hand, I'm not a big fan of it just because to me, it's America's pastime, not America's, let's speed it up time, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's great for the younger generation, but for someone, me or even you guys, I still think it should be America's pastime.
Well, the whole thing with, I guess, which is why folks younger than you, because unfortunately a lot of them are not watching baseball like our generations are, or the generations are. So I think that's probably why they did what they did with the pitch clock and the rush. Buddy Teneri, so unfortunately he was a victim of that. I think he called a timeout a couple of times in that Giants series, and I think he got kicked out of that Wednesday's game. But but I think it's definitely gonna be an adjustment for some of the older guys and such. So we'll see. I'm sure they'll figure it out as it goes. So real quick before we go to break, what do you think about the White Sox play so far?
It stinks that they got their butts kicked pretty much by the Giants the last couple of games, but I think they look pretty decent for the most part. Let's hope that the injuries don't catch up to them. I know that Kopech hasn't really been having the best starts, and I think they even said during the preseason that he wasn't even looking too good during then. So I hope this is just a weird slump for him. And it's great news that Liam Hendricks is, finished with chemo. Like that's something to celebrate about in itself. So hopefully he'll be back on the mound really soon.
Well, it's great because I guess he's ahead of schedule.
Which I think
Which I think we all said that. Look, if anyone was going to beat this, and it looks so far, all is good so far. It would be Hendricks. So we'll see once he does and if he does come back. So that's pretty cool to see. So we're going to take a really quick break. Of course, we got more to do. We'll talk with our girl Christina, her wonderful fiance Chris as well. We're going to talk some national championship games on both the men and the women's side. Some Masters talk, sports media, and a whole lot more. Lakina McGee, Sydney Brown, and of course our girl Christine Manika from KXRB, Second City Sports on Sports of Chicago. More talking. I was wrap things up. Coming up right after this.
This year, my mom got me the perfect bag for back to school.
These colorful binders help me stay organized.
These headphones are just what I need for studying.
These new sneakers are just what I need for the new year.
This jacket is a real must-have.
My parents got me the skateboard I wanted. It's pretty cool.
These scissors really come in handy in art class.
These colored pencils, too. These new socks? They can be a real lifesaver.
Actually, I'm gonna grab a chair for you. I was gonna say, can you grab the chair?
And I finally got my own phone to stay in touch with my mom.
Trisha's having a sleepover tonight. Can I go?
I wonder about Lucy's friends. What should I say? I know you're only 10, but one of these days a friend will offer you a drink. And alcohol at your age can lead to so many things. None of them good.
So can I go to the sleepover?
Lucy, I want you to promise me
I
something.
finished my homework.
Oh, that's
Bigger promise.
maybe.
If there's any drinking, I want you to say,
I got
no thanks,
well,
not my
I'm
thing.
okay right now.
Mom.
I promise you, your real friends won't care. Deal?
Sure.
I don't even know if
Really?
the songs are playing right now. I can't even tell.
I promise, Mom.
They really do hear you.
Did you pack your toothbrush?
For tips on how to start the talk, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov, a public service message from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
Did Six. Oh, there we go. Oh, there we go. Yeah.
Move it all closer.
Well, no, because then it will cut your head off since you're tall.
I'll just sit back.
Is that better?
Yeah. Oh, that's full dead.
Both less. He can come in.
Hey, this is Dr. J, and I listen to Sean and Maya in the morning.
I don't have one, so.
They're all good.
All right, and welcome back to Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago. My name is Akina McGee. You can follow me at Akina McGee on the Twitter and Akina McGee on the IG. Sid, unmute yourself.
Okay.
Sid. Oh, I can't think of you. There you go. Okay, you follow.
All right, you can follow yours truly on the Twitter and the IG at CK80. Once again, at CK80, that's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80. If you want to hit us up in the comments section, we have less than a half hour left of this extravaganza we call a Sports Talk Radio Show. You can go to Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or at Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in your questions or comments in the comments section. Again, we'll get them up on the screen for you.
All right, we got our buddy Christine Manika from KXRB and her wonderful fiance Chris. What's your last name? We had you on the show before a couple of times. We don't know your last name.
I've always made a little celebrity shout out, but it's Gilman, Gilman.
Okay, cool.
All right, let's welcome him in.
Right. Yay, you're welcome here. Thank you so much for joining us. Chris, we'll get to know a little bit more about you in a little bit.
All good.
But yeah, let's talk about the men's and women's national championship game. We'll do the women's first since they were first. Of course, that classic game. LSU beat Iowa to win their first ever hoops title. All the stuff that came, that went on afterwards. I know you didn't get a chance to comment on on Monday, but yeah, tell us what are your thoughts on the national championship here for the women?
Congratulations. Also, go ahead, Christine.
You go first.
Okay. I'll just say this real quickly. Congratulations to LSU Tigers for winning that national championship. Angel Reese, she's getting all the props right now, and rightfully so. I know her social media followers have increased from 70,000 to 1 million plus. I don't know if you guys caught the interview she did on SportsCenter earlier this morning, but she seems like a very humble person. I think she can separate the persona on the court from off the court. I know a lot of people from everywhere has been complaining about her persona, and remember, Caitlin Carter, she might not be as quote unquote edgy as Angel Reese, but remember, Caitlin Carter is like Steph Curry. She has her little swag too. I guess some people are comfortable with it, and the others are not comfortable with Angel Reese's swag, her attitude, from what have you, wherever floats your boat, float with it. But I think this, if the NCAA, i.e. ESPN, they possibly cannot screw this up. And when's the last time, unfortunately, and I do not, me, I try not to play battle of the sexes on the show. I try not to do that, but we got to be real here. When's the last time the women's game has been a topic of conversation, in particular people that don't watch it on a regular basis? If you're the NCAA and ESPN, you cannot screw this up starting next year and beyond, because you're going to have more eyeballs tuning in for these two teams to play.
Christine? Yeah, you go, Christine.
Yeah, I gotta say, everyone kind of needs to calm down about Angel Reese doing the "you can't see me" back at Caitlin Clark. That's ridiculous. She did it first. It's a part of sports. Just because they're females doesn't mean they can't have that attitude either. And I think she had every right to show off a little bit and just show off that swagger, because yeah, they were winning and they won. And it's good for the program, especially for Coach Kim, being her, one of the first times she's with LSU and giving them their first title. So I think it's great all around for women's sports. I know for Iowa, they had to actually pause ticket sales because there's such a high demand right now. So it's good all around. Especially Iowa fans need to calm down about the whole Angel Reese thing, saying that it was poor sportsmanship. It's a part of the game, and even the girls know that too.
Chris, you got thoughts? I know you do.
Chris?
No, I mean, I think she worded it correctly, perfectly. What was I going to say? Gosh, I am totally rambling. If you didn't want them to celebrate on you, then you should have beat them on the court. So all of this is sour grapes, and I don't.
We're having
for somebody who has been in like high level competition. I'm not saying I have, but for people out there who have been in things like this before, I think the range of emotions that come with it, it's only natural that things like this will happen. So I think you have to let things play out and understand that these kids are only 19 to 22 years old. So that's the other aspect of it.
Absolutely, yeah. You said it perfectly, Chris. Yeah, don't feel bad. But yeah, I'll look on the men's side too. Very mundane. Not as exciting as the women's game, but UConn won the fifth championship. Of course, they're doing the whole 5 thing all over the place. So real quick, as we do a synopsis of the men's championship game, Christine, I'll start with you. What'd you think?
Good try by San Diego. I mean, you didn't have the number 1 seeds in there, so that was kind of refreshing to see a 4 and a 5 seed play against each other during the national championship. I only watched bits and pieces of it, really. I tried to watch as much of the women's game that we could, but we just didn't have access to it. So we saw bits and pieces of it for Gonzaga and San Diego State. I'm sorry, UConn and San Diego State. I say Gonzaga because I had them winning in my Final Four.
It's there.
Chris, you got any thoughts on this?
No. To be honest, I hadn't paid much attention to the college basketball scene leading into the tournament, and then I believe after maybe the first or the second win. So while UConn made it to the Sweet 16, I know there were a lot of rumblings saying that they have a pretty simple route to the title, and they're a really hot team right now. So I wasn't terribly surprised that they ended up winning, or at least made it to the final. And when it's a one game, a winner take all, you never know what can happen. A team can get hot shooting, but they definitely seem like the better team throughout the tournament.
See, it's not so bad, Chris. You could do it for a little bit more practice. You could do this full time.
You do it just fine. You're so nervous about it. All right, I know you got some thoughts on some other stuff too. You want to ask before we get to really get into the meat of the potatoes of why we have Chris here with us. But yeah, so I know you got some other things you want to talk about.
I want to ask Chris, going back to baseball. The Anaheim Angels, of course, they took care of Seattle early this week on the road. Your guy Shohei Ohtani, I was watching that game on Wednesday. He got caught not once but twice with the violations. Should we be worried at all? What are your thoughts about your Angels or Anaheim, whatever the hell they call these days?
We've had like 6 iterations the last 20 years, so it's hard to keep up.
It is. It really is.
I actually didn't catch it. What was it about?
It was a pitch clock violation. He did it once when he was on the mound. He started on Wednesday, and then he had another one. He was a batter. So,
Yeah,
okay.
twice. Yeah, twice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he did it twice, and so of course he got the rules explained to him why he thought that he didn't violate the rule, but he did. And so we'll as we said before. Me and Lakina were talking before you brought you guys on. The pace of play looks like it's picking up in baseball. We've seen averages of 2.5 hours to 2 hours and 45 minutes. Do you like this pace, Chris, watching it on TV compared to being there? Or do you mind the time length at all these baseball games?
I enjoy the pace. I don't necessarily think that Angel games in particular take too long. I think you can always look up the box score and see how long it takes. But the ones that really get me, I mean, we're all relatively the same age, and think how many times you watch Sunday Night Baseball and it's a Yankee Red Sox game and it takes like 4 hours and 10 minutes.
Thank you.
And it's way too long for people in the central time zones and on the East Coast. Yeah, at least me being on the West Coast, I could stay up for it when I was a kid. But it's just, for people attending those games, it's too tough getting back at 1 a.m. for something like that. So I welcome the change. My dad is in that arena, not in professional baseball, but in college, and he absolutely loves it. So I don't take my cues from him, but I think it's a welcome change.
Oh yeah, I think we all can agree on that. It's definitely a welcome change with the shorter times and stuff like that. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see if they can keep up here, because I'm wondering, like, will it get to a point where folks gonna get a little bit too antsy with it being such a short thing? But they're adjusted pretty well, so it is what it is. I'm sure Ohtani will adjust too, so it won't be too bad. Now, so you got anything else you wanna talk about before we get go into golf here?
Since we get to know Chris a little bit, of course, we talk about interleague play, which started back in 1997 with, of course, the Yankees and Mets, of course, Cubs, Sox here in Chicago, of course, out there in California, you have A's, Giants, of course, Angels, Dodgers out there. Since I know the Anaheim Angels only won their only World Series in 2002, of course, the Dodgers won their last one, of course, a couple of years ago, Chris. I know the fan rivalries are intense in those other places I just mentioned. Do you get that same sense being an Angels fan? Do you really have a hatred for Dodgers fans, or you just don't care?
No,
Okay.
not at all. Not at all.
Okay.
My parents grew up in the Valley, and therefore you grew up Dodger fans, because when they were first kids, there wasn't even a California, Anaheim, Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, whatever you want to call them. And so it comes naturally. And if you know anything about the history of the Angels, they actually played in Dodger Stadium for, I believe, a year before they moved to Anaheim.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And we certainly don't get that sort of animosity towards each other. If we had another 50 years of history and fought in a couple of World Series against each other, that may be a different story. But for the time being, I think it's more of a friendly rivalry. It's cyclical. The Dodgers are obviously a super team nowadays, and they have a lot of good money behind it, and it's a huge fan base. And they're not going to go away for the foreseeable future. It's a little more uncertain with the Angels, and I was over the moon when Trout signed a couple of years ago, and I told Christine last week that if we don't make the World Series, we're not going to re-sign Ohtani because he's going to want $500 million, and he's going to get it from somebody. Therefore, I think we need to enjoy this year for what it is. And if we make the World Series and he decides to re-sign with us, then I'll be over the moon again. Otherwise, we're just going to see another, great talent go down the road somewhere.
Oh yeah, and I think the trade talks too. I know you guys are not happy with all the trade talks that be floated around about Ohtani the last couple of years, especially. And it'll only get worse too as the season goes on. And if the Angels are doing okay right now, but are you guys prepared for that?
Hey, how do you let a unicorn just, get up and leave your stable? That will be a bitter pill to swallow.
All right, Lakina, let's get into this Masters talk. Because I'm watching my monitor right now. What's his face? Marty Smith is doing an interview. I forgot who he's interviewing, but right now, as I have it on my scorecard sheet via the app, Bruce Koepka is leading with a -12. Sam Bennett of the United States is in second place with a -8. Tiger Woods at a +2. He's on the borderline of making the cut. Do you see him making the cut?
Hopefully, the rain stays off. I've been updating it pretty frequently this afternoon, and it looks like the majority of the bad stuff is going to miss Augusta this afternoon. So I think they'll get it in. He has to try so hard nowadays because of his body, and it's unfortunate for a million reasons. One, because most notably because I'm a huge fan, and I know a lot of us are. But it just, other than the physical stuff, I think he puts himself in a lot of places where it's very difficult to be aggressive, to make a lot of birdies. So he's always playing catch up a little bit compared to some of these kids who have less scar tissue on them.
Yeah.
So I cautiously optimistic about it.
I'm optimistic,
but I don't know. I'm a little fatalistic about it too. So I guess you could say I'm riding the fence right now.
Well, yeah, I think we saw how he's been walking. How he's been walking. I mean, you can tell he's struggling just to walk from hole to hole. So that's been kind of like you're kind of afraid for him. And he even said to himself, "Look, I mean, I know more guys in the Champions Tour than he does in the PGA Tour these days." So you got to wonder: is it starting to kind of get to a point where he might be counting down to perhaps maybe playing Masters full time?
Well, I got to say this really quick with Tiger. I think, and I told Chris this, I've noticed that he's walking better than what he was last year. Because last year he was using his golf club a lot. So that already shows a whole heck of a lot of improvement from last year. Now, depending on the rain and if or not he makes the cut, it could be really challenging for him the next couple of days. Not only are you walking on the hills, but imagine those hills be covered with mud and just flooding. It will be hard for him, I think. So I don't know. Maybe I guess I shouldn't say it depends on how much he wants it. It depends on if he has the fight in him to keep going and to make the cut at this point.
Yeah, you might be right about that. Now, Koepka, I saw a little bit of Koepka's around, of course, streaming. Of course, they don't have the TV coverage. They have it going on right now as people, they don't have the early coverage, but he looked really good, but at 60,
oh my gosh,
67. I mean, that's great. Also, Sam Bennett, who was an amateur, this would probably be, I think, the first time ever that an amateur would win the Masters. So that's crazy how he's been doing so far. John Ron, Colin Morikawa, your guy, Christine Victor Hovland, had a little bit of a slow start. Has to go to a slow start right now. Scotty Scheffler kind of went down a bit. He had a pretty tough first few holes. Phil Mickelson, Justin Rose. I mean, some of the other. Well, we'll talk about the live. We'll talk about the live stuff too in a second. But what do you guys think? I mean, who do you guys think can probably emerge and victorious here in Augusta?
I'll tell you what, someone must have lit a fire under Koepka, because after winning Live last week and now possibly winning the Masters, it just shows that golf is literally anybody's game. A year ago, Brooks Koepka was not playing like this. He was playing like how Bryson DeChambeau is playing right now, actually, in a way. So this is pretty much the best golf of his life. The amateur that was in the Masters last year, I was just telling Chris that he didn't do all that great, but he was able to make the cut, and he got to play with Tiger Woods. So that guy's probably thinking, I'm playing with Tiger right now, and I made the cut in the Masters. That's a pretty gosh darn good accomplishment. So for this to happen, to be literally inches away from the lead, that's pretty awesome. And I got to give credit to Jason Day too, 46 years old and literally playing with the big dogs.
Jason Day is like 34.
34? Oh, never mind.
Oh my gosh, Chris, what do you?
He was older than that.
He's been around a long
wow.
time, though. That's probably why you think he's a little bit older. He's been around forever, it seems.
Yes, yeah, 19
Yeah,
years
just
old.
like celebrity birthdays. I can't get them right. It's fine.
What do you think, Chris?
Oh, I was gonna say this is y'all's show, so if you want me to talk, I will. But yeah, go at it. It's gonna be his to lose, to be honest with you. I'm not the biggest fan of his, but because his demeanor I think is a little off-putting, especially off the golf course.
Yeah,
that's fair. Yeah,
Super dismissive, but there is. Again, when you guys have talked with other professional athletes, I'm sure, and high level anything, and people have to have a certain amount of ego to drive themselves to make them want to be the best. And I think golf is no different. I think it comes with the territory a little bit. So having been in that sort of arena, I sort of excuse it a little bit. I mean, Tiger has an enormous ego, and it's driven him to be the best golfer of all time. And if you don't believe in yourself like that, then you got to go do something else. So that said, if you watched any of the Netflix documentary, he looked pretty broken. Brooks did.
Yep.
He looked pretty fragile mentally, and that was a side that nobody had really seen before to the greater public. And for him to be thinking and playing the way he is right now, it's obvious his body is feeling a lot better, and I think it's translating into his scores. So an uber confident, cocky Brooks Koepka is very dangerous for everybody else in this field.
Yeah.
So I think it's his to lose.
Yeah, we'll see if the game of golf can market it around a person like that, because we saw what they did with Tiger when he was in his prime, and so everybody, including the casual fans like yours truly, were glued to that television. So we'll see if the game of golf can market around Koepka. I want to Chris Gilman, Christine the Queen Manika join us here on Second City Sports, right here on Sports on Chicago, the Friday edition. I'm Sid. That's Lakina. Chris, I assume that you played in not so well stable conditions throughout the years. I was watching Scott Van Pelt and Andy North last night, and they were talking about the possible bad weather for this weekend. It looks like they're going to miss it today. There's trouble possibly for tomorrow, and it's iffy for Sunday. What adjustments that you had to make in order to play in so tough conditions?
For the people who hit it really high, Augusta is a place where it's very up and down, and you get a sense of it a little bit on TV, but when you're on the grounds, you're either hitting super downhill or you're going straight up the hill, or sort of traversing the side of one. And for somebody who can hit it really high and take out some of that variance, and especially if the ground's going to be a lot softer, ball doesn't roll terribly far on the fairways as it is. So look for somebody who hits it far in the first place. And so like John Rahm, for example, loves to hit the ball a little bit lower. He's an incredibly strong golfer, but I think conditions will determine a little bit how good he plays the rest of the way. I think he will probably play well the rest of the day today, but I think with him hitting the ball a little bit lower compared to some of the other guys, I think it may be a little bit tougher for him to get it out to the same spots where he would in dry conditions. I don't know. For myself, that was always an issue too, because I hit a little bit lower. The first, out of anything else, you just got to try and stay dry, and it's so lame. Like we're such prima donnas.
You don't say.
Like during like those types of conditions in the rain and wind, he thrives when it's really windy. I don't know what it is, but like he literally just uses that strong wind to the advantage. And to the point, when it rains, not terribly hard and lightning, but he uses that to his advantage too. So whenever it's windy, I'm like, all right, it's going to be a good day for Gilly.
Yeah, she's right about that. I actually welcome it. And I think a lot of it just has to do with, again, it's an ego thing. It's a mindset thing. And you welcome adverse conditions. So somebody who's mentally strong and, like I said, a confident chip on his shoulder, Brooks Koepka, is going to be a tough horse to catch. And when anybody's playing well, if I'm feeling myself, I do the exact same thing in bad conditions. So I guess have it up here, and secondly, just keep these mitts dry, and everything else it can rain 3-4 inches. I don't care. I'm gonna have a great day as long as you have the right mindset.
Yeah, do you like playing like in the links sort of, style? Do you like it kind of like the Masters where it can be fast, one time, but it could slow it down? So what kind of course do you like playing on?
Oh, great question. Probably something a little bit faster, just because I like to play the ball a little bit lower, and I enjoy the creative side of it. So for the Masters nowadays, compared to 30 years ago before they tiger-proofed the golf course.
That's what they did.
Yeah, exactly. They just made it better for him. Don't tell anybody that. But you could play the ball on the ground a lot more, and like seemingly every year out there, it was really, really firm, and you had to putt extremely well, and that was the real way to differentiate yourself. And nowadays, it's about hitting driver as hard and far as you can out there, because otherwise you're gonna have such distances into the greens at Augusta, and the greens are a touch softer than they used to be. They sort of, every year they seem to redo the greens in a slight way, where they will actually move earth and do very subtle changes, and they've made the greens a little bit easier over the past, say, 30 years. And I think that's because they wanted to add a bunch of length to the golf course, and therefore give people a little bit of a chance from longer distances to actually like stay on the greens and make birdies and stuff. Because I'm not saying they make the golf course easy for the Masters, but there are certain aspects of it that they introduce to make sure that the fans are seeing a lot of birdies and eagles out there. So I think that's a positive for everybody. It's entertainment first and foremost, and sometimes we forget that.
Mm-hmm. One more question for you, Chris, before we move on. What's some of the toughest golf courses you played in?
Well, I shot just under 3 million when I played Oklahoma State's golf course in Stillwater. It's a cool little college town. There is, I will say, Victor Hovland actually lives there now, and I think Matthew Wolf, who plays on the Live, I think he bought a house there as well, because they're both Okie State guys. But that place is incredibly hard. Other than that, I think it's more conditions based than anything else. I played Torrey Pines under normal conditions, not under U.S. Open conditions, like where Tiger won and where John Rahm won a couple of years ago. I would say the rest of the places I've played are just, it's hard because we had a 30-mile-an-hour wind, or it rained sideways, or they did something to trick up the golf course. But probably Stillwater, Oklahoma is probably the hardest golf course I've ever played.
Yeah. I heard about that. That golf course is pretty hard. So, but people like playing there. Yeah. So I think didn't Ricky Fowler go to OK State, I believe. So
yes, yeah. And it had been open for like 30 years, and I think the course record was still only like 5 under par. Yeah. And I mean, there are places where it's like 15 under par is 12 under par is the course record. So that lends some credence to how difficult it really is. All right, I am done.
He's done. Okay. All right, so we're wrapping things up here with myself, Lakina McGee, Cindy Brown, our girl KXRB's Christine Manika, and her awesome fiance, Chris Gilman, here on Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago. Jim Nance, of course, we saw how seamlessly he does it with going from college hoops to now doing the Masters, doing the Masters call as we speak. So, it's definitely, you saw all the pomp and circumstance that he got, throughout the week, this past weekend and the Final Four and stuff. So it's not like he's retiring, folks. He's just going to be retiring doing the college hoops part. But I thought it was, really sweet that that Ron Howard, of course, the Oscar-winning director, and his good friend, did that tribute for him and such. So they did a standing ovation. So what do you guys think? Do you think that Jim Nance will be missed doing college hoops? Because for our generation, Sid Night's generation, he was the voice. I know for you guys as well. So what do you guys think? He will be missed.
This is all you love.
I think he will definitely be missed. But, I get it. He wants to spend more time with his kids and more time with the grandkids. And I think he called it being the all-around dad or something like that recently. And that's a lot. I mean, he has a lot of time between football and March Madness. But when you have March Madness and then go straight into the Masters, that's a tall order to ask of anybody, especially when you have so many things compacted in so short amount of time. So I think he wants to try to slow down a little bit. Again, not retiring. He definitely just wants more time with his family, especially when football season takes up a lot of that time too.
Yeah, I thought it was poetic words that he said, his last words on the broadcast. Thanks for being my friend. And I found it interesting that the music was playing just a little bit louder as they were trying to rush him off the air. I found that just a little bit disrespectful by CBS. But with that being said, as Lakina said, that he's called some of the great iconic moments in college basketball. Of course, starting his first one in '91, that national semifinal game, one of the top 3 best college basketball games I've ever seen. That was Duke and UNLV. Of course, that was before Duke went on his run. Of course, UNLV was undefeated. And of course, Duke beat him all the time. And that's how Duke got on their run. And of course, remember the Fab Five the next couple of years, Lakina, even though they didn't win, but there was some iconic moments there. Chris Webber, the timeout in '93, don't talk to him about that. That's a whole nother issue. And of course, going through Michigan State. And of course, you mentioned earlier, Lakina, we talked about Duke and UConn. Of course, the UConn upset in 1999, defeating Elton Brand and his squad. And of course, the last several years as college basketball has changed. So Nance has been the voice of March Madness throughout this last 25, 30 plus years. So he will be missed, like Christine said. But football, he's going to be right there. Remember, I think Lakina, they get the Super Bowl next year, CBS.
Yes, they do. Yes,
so he's going to have to put up with Tony Romo a couple extra weeks, including the Super Bowl.
Oh, geez. Yeah, that. Yeah, that's all right. There, but yeah, well, and look, Eagle's going to be taking over. So. It's in good hands. Well, we're in good hands with March Madness on CBS, and Turner, so they're going to be doing just fine. So, anything else before we disperse?
A couple of just a quick headline. I'll read it here if I can pull it up. Of course, we know that Bally Sports they went in bankruptcy. Of course, they're owned by Diamond Sports. They went in bankruptcy in March. They had to pay several teams. I'll just read the headline here. I want to get your comments, Lakina and Christine. MLB files emergency motion asking the court to make Diamond Sports pay the Minnesota Twins and the Cleveland Guardians. Now, both those teams, I think the only 2 teams from the baseball realm that haven't received their payments yet.
Ooh, yeah, that's not good. That's not good at all. I mean, if you don't want to, owe a team money and such. So yeah, that's not good.
And this is the Twins last year on Bally Sports North. And so let's just say they wanted to lead that network. Where are you going to go?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely something y'all got to figure out. Of course, I think San Diego, they finally paid San Diego too. The Padres. So all that going on too. So yeah, they're in a tough spot. Bally Sports is. I'm talking about Diamond Sports too, their parent company. So yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with that.
Yeah.
No, I agree. We were up in Wisconsin visiting my cousins, and he's a big Brewers fan, and he's not kind of disappointed. He is disappointed because the Brewers were on Bally Sports, and now he can hardly watch the game. It's very tough for him to watch the game and to enjoy it. He's been listening to on the radio and stuff like that, but he wants to see the action too. So he said, and I agree, it's doing a disservice to to the fans, not just for Brewers, but for the Twins, Guardians, and anybody else who was under Bally Sports.
Yeah.
With all the sports too, the NHL, the NBA. So that's definitely going to be something to look out for these next few months, especially. I know that there have been like some. I know the Washington Commanders. I know they pulled themselves out of NBC Sports DC. So that's another thing that could we be seeing other teams do the same thing. We'll have to wait and see with that.
Yeah, we'll have to worry about, like I said, NBC Sports regional networks. Of course, that affects us here in Chicago with the White Sox and the Blackhawks and the Bulls as well. So we'll see what happens down the road. Christine, I want to ask you this last question before we close out. The Chicago Bulls, they clinched the 10th spot in the play-in tournament. They're not in the playoffs, but they're in the play-in. They have 2 games remaining. And, of course, next week it looks like they'll play Toronto or Miami or Atlanta. They'll need to get 2 wins just to participate in the next weekend's playoffs. What's the percentage of chances that you like them getting into the actual playoffs?
Gosh, I hope they do. I'm even surprised they're in the 10th spot. You know, we were just talking about this a couple of days ago too, and the team, it's just they're going to go into a rebuild next year. No matter what's going to happen, they're going to go into a rebuild team-wise. I hope they keep Billy Donovan. I think he's a great coach for the team. I think he's got a good head on his shoulders, and he had a good, strong first season with them. I just think with injuries and trading and this and that, I just don't think it was in the cards for them this year. So I hope that they can pull something off. I'm going to give them about a 35% chance that they do, and go from there.
It'll be interesting though. Like I said, they did win 2 games, so that's Toronto. If they do play Toronto, I'm a little more confident with Miami and Atlanta and with Toronto. They got to play Toronto. Will's first game might be a little bit iffy, but we'll see.
Like
we'll
I said, 35%, generous 35%.
Right. Exactly. On that note, you follow me at Keaton McGee on the Twitter and at Keaton McGee on the IG.
You can follow yours truly, Sydney Brown, on the Twitter and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, at SidKid80, SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80. Christine, where can the lovely people follow you on social media? Chris got it.
There you go.
You can follow me at Manika_KXRB.
We might have a job for you, young man, after all this is done.
I'll say, do you have any social media where people can follow you? Your golf adventures?
My Twitter handle is all lowercase Golfer Gilly.
Cool.
GOLFERGILLY.
All right, nice. So all right, nice. Thank you guys again so much for joining us today, and thank you guys for watching and listening to us as well. So you can watch us anytime you want on Roku TV, of course. If you got the Roku TV app, or if you got the Roku on your smart TV, you can catch our show, Sean and Maya, the Smoke Fellas. I know the Smoke Fellas will have some stuff coming up this weekend as well. Also, too, what's up, cuz? So, South River Squad, give it the program. Sports of Chicago is now on Roku TV.
Yes, we will provide. We're on the air 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, live and on demand.
And in color, I guess.
Yes, and in living color, yes.
So something like that. Okay, so
not Technicolor, in HD 4K.
Oh, Technicolor. Oh, good grief. All right, but also you can also listen to us anytime you want on War Media podcast, I should say, where anytime you get your podcast, Spotify, Google Play, Google, I should say, and also to other wherever you get your podcast. So we're all right there anytime you want.
Yeah, so don't forget to catch Second City Sports live in living color every Monday and every Friday from noon to 2 p.m. Central Standard Time right here on Sports Zone Chicago. One more game, as the kids would say. Catch Second City Sports live in living color every Monday, every Friday from noon to 2 p.m. Central Standard Time, exclusively right here on Sports Zone Chicago.
All right. Stay safe and dry out there. Of course, I know it's been a little bit in the rain. The weather's been a little bit crazy. So, but happy Easter to all of you if you celebrate. Enjoy the food. Enjoy the Easter egg, hunts and such if you believe in that kind of stuff. So, stay safe out there and dry and enjoy all the sports. We got some great sports weekend this weekend, of course, with the NBA regular season, the Masters, and all the other stuff. Of course, the NHL's finished up their season as well. So, busy springtime for the sports fans here. So, for Sid, Christine, and Chris, I'm the Kansas Second City Sports on Sports of Chicago, and we'll see you guys next week.
Well, the Easter Bunny won't be making a visit to Lakina's house this weekend. Go Tiger! Holla!
Oh, come on.